This week, members of the U.S. House continued a recent tradition which started in 2011. Every 2 years, they take turns reading the U.S. Constitution on the House floor. This is just over an hour.
Pursuant to Section 5A of House Resolution 5, the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte, for the reading of the Constitution. Where is he?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this morning, for the fourth time in the history of the House of Representatives, we will read aloud on the floor of the House the full text of the U.S. Constitution. It is our hope that this reading will help demonstrate to the American people that the House of Representatives is dedicated to the Constitution and the system it establishes for limited government and the protection of individual liberty. We also hope that it will inspire many more Americans to read the Constitution themselves. The text we will read today reflects the changes to the document made by the 27 amendments to it. Those portions superseded by amendment will not be read. In order to ensure fairness to all those interested in participating, we have asked members to line up to be recognized on a first-come, first-served basis. I will recognize members based on this guidance. Each member will approach the podium and read the passage laid out for him or her. In order to ensure relative parity and fairness, I may recognize members out of order to ensure bipartisanship and balance. Additionally, because of his long-term leadership on civil rights issues, I will recognize Representative John Lewis to read the 13th Amendment. I want to thank the members of both parties for their participation in this historic event, and I will begin by reading the preamble to the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. I now recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Hultgren.
Article 1, Section 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives.
The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
Thank you. I'll now read from Article 1, Section 2. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualification requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature.
The gentleman from Maine, Mr. Poliquin.
No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state in which he shall be chosen. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States, and within every subsequent term of 10 years in such manner as they shall by law direct.
The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Walz.
The number of representatives shall not exceed 1 for every 30,000, but each state shall have at least 1 representative, and until such enumeration shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3, Massachusetts 8, Rhode Island and Providence Plantations 1, Connecticut 5, New York 6, New Jersey 4, Pennsylvania 8, Delaware 1, Maryland 6, Virginia 10, North Carolina 5, South Carolina 5, and Georgia 3.
The gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Lance.
When vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill each such vacancies. The House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green.
Section 3, the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. Immediately after they shall be assembled, in consequence of the first election, they shall be divided as equally as may be into 3 classes.
The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Bost.
The seats of the senators of the first class shall be vacant at the expiration of the second year, of the second class at the expiration of the fourth year, and at the third class at the expiration of the sixth year, so that 1/3 may be chosen every second year.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much. No person shall be a senator who shall not have attained the age of 30 years and been 9 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state for which he shall be chosen.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gomert.
The Vice President of the United States shall be President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. The Senate shall choose their other officers and also a President pro tempore in the absence of the Vice President, or when he shall exercise the office of President of the United States.
The gentlewoman from California, Ms. Barragan.
The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be an oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside, and no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present.
The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Loudermilk.
Judgment in the cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to the law.
The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Lipinski.
The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But the Congress may at any time, by law, make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing senators.
The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Griffith.
Each House shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. But a smaller number may adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each House may provide.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Wahlberg.
Each House may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of 2/3 expel a member. Each House shall keep a journal of its proceedings and from time to time publish the same, excepting such parts as may in their judgment require secrecy. And the yeas and nays of the members of either House on any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered on the journal.
The gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westerman.
Neither House, during the session of Congress, shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any other place than that in which the two houses shall be sitting.
The gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Gibbs.
The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. They shall, on all cases except treason, felony, and breach of the peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses and on ingoing to and returning from the same, and for any speech or debate in either house shall not be questioned at any other place.
The gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Pierce.
No senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or the emoluments thereof, whereof shall have been increased during such time. And no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during the continuance in office.
The gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Guthrie.
All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills.
The gentlewoman from California, the Democratic leader, Ms. Pelosi.
Every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it become a law, be presented to the President of the United States. If he approve, he shall sign it, but if he not, he shall return it, with his objections to that House in which it shall have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal and proceed to reconsider it.
The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Rutherford.
If after such reconsideration 2/3 of that House shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent together with the objections to the other House, by which it shall likewise be reconsidered, and if approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become a law.
The gentlewoman from Hawaii, Ms. Gabbard.
But in all such cases, the votes of both houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, and the names of the persons voting for and against the bill shall be entered on the journal of each house respectively.
The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Dunn.
If any bill shall not be returned by the President within 10 days, Sundays excepted, after it shall have been presented to him, the same shall be law, in like manner as if he had signed it, unless the Congress by their adjournment prevents its return, in which case it shall not be law.
The gentleman from New York, Mr. Crowley.
Every order, resolution, or vote to which the concurrence of the Senate and House of Representatives may be necessary, except on a question of adjournment, shall be presented to the President of the United States, and before the same shall take effect, shall be approved by him or being disapproved by him shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate and House of Representatives according to the rules and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill.
The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Abraham.
The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and the general welfare of the United States, but all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Correa.
To borrow money on the credit of the United States, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among several states, and with the Indian tribes, to establish an uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States.
The gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Davidson.
To coin money, regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures, to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States, to establish post offices and post roads.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal.
To promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Rothfuss.
To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, to define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations.
The gentleman from Florida, the gentleman from California, Mr. Barra.
To declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years.
The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Yoho.
To provide and maintain a Navy, to make rules for the government and regulations of the land and naval forces, to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions.
The gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin.
To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Williams.
To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may, by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings.
The gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Jayapal.
and to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Farenthold.
Section 9. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by the Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person.
The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Perlmutter.
The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless, when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. No bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Farenthold. I'm sorry. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Flores.
No capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. No tax or duty shall be laid upon the articles exported from any state.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Vargas.
No preference shall be given by any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another, nor shall vessels bound to or from one state be obliged to enter, clear, or pay duties in another.
The gentleman from Iowa, Mr. King.
No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time.
The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott.
No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office or of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatsoever from any king, prince, or foreign state.
The gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Hill.
Section 10. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility.
The gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Kelly.
No state shall, without the consent of the Congress, lay any imposts or duties or imports on exports except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws, and the net produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state on imports or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revision and control of the Congress.
The gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Yoder.
No state, without the consent of Congress, shall lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay.
The gentlewoman from New Jersey, Ms. Watson Coleman.
Article 2, Section 1. The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the Vice President, chosen from the same term, be elected as follows.
The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Allen.
Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector.
The gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Demings.
The Congress may determine the time of crossing the electors and the day on which they shall give their votes, which day shall be the same throughout the United States.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Babin.
No person except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of President. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained to the age of 35 years and been 14 years a resident within the United States.
The gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Castor.
The President shall, at stated times, receive for his services a compensation which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he shall have been elected, and he shall not receive within that period any other emolument from the United States or any of them.
The gentleman from Washington, Mr. Newhouse.
Before he enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Byer.
Section 2, the President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States except in cases of impeachment.
The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Paulson.
He shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur, and he shall nominate and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States, whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law.
The gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer.
But the Congress may, by law, vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the President alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of departments.
The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Carter.
The President shall have power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session.
The gentlewoman from Oregon, Ms. Bonamici.
He shall, from time to time, give to the Congress information of the state of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient.
The gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon.
He may, on extraordinary occasions, convene both houses or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them, with respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper.
The gentlewoman from Minnesota, Ms. McCollum.
He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care that laws be faithfully executed and shall commission all the officers of the United States.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Olson.
Section 4. The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
The gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Brown.
Article 3, Section 1. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior and shall, at stated times, receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office.
The gentlewoman from Washington and the Majority Conference Chairman, Ms. McMorris-Rogers.
The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made, or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction.
The gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. Esty.
To controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between two or more states, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens, or subjects.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Huizinga.
In all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, and those in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. In all the other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make.
The gentlewoman from New Hampshire, Ms. Custer.
The trial of all crimes, except in the cases of impeachment, shall be by jury, and such trials shall be held in the state where the said crimes shall have been committed. But when not committed within any state, the trial shall be at such place or places as the Congress may by law have directed.
The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Gallagher.
Section 3. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them, or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act, or on confession in open court.
The gentlewoman from California, Ms. Matsui.
The Congress shall have power to declare the punishment of treason, but no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person attainted.
The gentleman from New York, Mr. Zeldin.
Article 4, Section 1.
full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state. And the Congress may by general laws prescribe the manner in which such acts, records, and proceedings shall be proved, and the effect thereof.
The gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Murphy.
Section 2. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. A person charged in any state with treason, felony, or other crime, who shall flee from justice and be found in another state, shall, on demand of the executive authority of the state from which he fled, be delivered up to be removed to the state having jurisdiction of the crime.
The gentleman from New York, Mr. Faso.
Section 3. New states may be admitted by the Congress into this union, but no new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state, nor any state be formed by the junction of two or more states or parts of states without the consent of the legislatures of the states concerned, as well as of the Congress.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed as to prejudice any claims of the United States or of any particular state.
The gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Hollingsworth.
The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion, and on application of the legislature or the executive, when the legislature cannot be convened, against domestic violence.
The gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Delbene.
Article 5. The Congress, whenever two-thirds of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or, on the application of the legislatures of two-thirds of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which, in either case, shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Molinar.
Or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses in the 9th section of the first article, and that no state, without its consent, shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate.
The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Keating.
Article 6. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under the Constitution as under the Confederation. This Constitution and the laws of the United States shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or the laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding.
The gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Smith.
The senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. But no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States.
The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Tsongas.
Article 7. The ratification of the conventions of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states so ratifying the same.
The gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Johnson.
Done in convention by the unanimous consent of the states present the 17th day of September in the year of our Lord 1787, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 12th, in witness whereof we have hereunto subscribed our names.
The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Johnson.
George Washington, President and Deputy from Virginia. Delaware, George Reed, Gunning Bedford Jr., John Dickinson, Richard Bassett, Jacob Broome. Maryland, John McHenry, Daniel St. Thomas Jennifer, Daniel Carroll. Virginia, John Blair, James Madison Jr. North Carolina, William Blunt, Richard Dobbs Spate, Hugh Williamson. South Carolina, John Rutherford, Charles Coatsworth Pinckney, Charles Pinckney. Pierce Butler, Georgia, William Few, and Abraham Baldwin.
The gentlewoman from Missouri, Ms. Wagner.
New Hampshire, John Langdon, Nicholas Gilman. Massachusetts, Nathaniel Gorham and Rufus King. Connecticut, William Samuel Johnson, Roger Sherman. New York, Alexander Hamilton. New Jersey, William Livingston, David Beerley, William Patterson, Jonathan Dayton. Pennsylvania, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Mifflin, Robert Morris, George Clymer, Thomas Fitzsimmons, Jared Ingersoll, James Wilson, Gouverneur Morris. Amendment 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances.
The gentleman from Illinois, the gentleman from West Virginia, Mr. Jenkins.
The Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Schneider.
Amendment 3. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Cartwright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Amendment 4, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
The gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs.
The Fifth Amendment. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger.
The gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Loebsack.
Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation.
The gentlewoman from California, Ms. Walters.
Amendment 6. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense.
The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Nolan.
Amendment 7. In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than in accordance with the rules of the common law.
The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. LaHood.
Amendment 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Amendment 9. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
The gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Hoyer, the Democratic whip.
Amendment number 9. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.
The gentleman from New York, Mr. Maloney.
Amendment 11. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Arrington.
Amendment 12. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots for the person voted for as vice president. And they shall make distinct list of all persons voted for as president, and of all persons voted for as vice president, and of the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate.
The gentlewoman from Nevada, Ms. Rosen.
The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be the president. If such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if no person have such a majority, then from the persons having the highest numbers, not exceeding 3 on the list of those as voted for as president.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Perry.
The House of Representatives shall choose immediately, by ballot, the President. But in choosing the President, the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having one vote. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states, and a majority of all the states shall be necessary to a choice.
The gentlewoman from Delaware, Ms. Rochester.
The person having the greatest number of votes as Vice President shall be the Vice President. If such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if no person have a majority, then from the two highest numbers on the list, the Senate shall choose the Vice President.
The gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa.
A quorum for the purpose shall consist of 2/3 of the whole number of senators, and a majority of the whole number shall be necessary to a choice, but no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of President shall be eligible to that of Vice President of the United States.
The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Lewis.
Amendment 13. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
The gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Schakowsky.
All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States.
The gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Joyce.
Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor to deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Section 2. Representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed.
The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Soto.
But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for President and Vice President of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, or the members of the legislature thereof, is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged except for participation in rebellion or other crime, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson.
Section 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States.
The gentlewoman from Arizona, Ms. Sinema.
or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each House, remove such disability.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Denham.
The validity of the public debt of the United States, authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned. But neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for the loss or emancipation of any slave. But all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void.
The gentleman from New York, Mr. Serrano.
Section 5. The Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. Amendment 15, Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude.
The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis.
Section 2, the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment 16, the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Lowenthal.
Amendment 17. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislatures. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies.
The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Rouser.
Provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election as the legislature may direct. This amendment shall not be so construed as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it becomes valid as part of the Constitution. Amendment 19. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
The gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Womack.
Amendment 20, Section 1. The terms of the President and the Vice President shall end at noon on the 20th day of January, and the terms of Senators and Representatives at noon on the 3rd day of January of the years in which such terms would have ended if this article had not been ratified, and the terms of their successors shall then begin. Section 2. The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meetings shall begin at noon on the 3rd day of January, unless they shall, by law, appoint a different day. Section 3. If at the time fixed for the beginning of the term of the President-elect shall have died, the Vice President-elect shall become President. If a President shall not have been chosen before the time fixed for the beginning of his term, or if the President-elect shall have failed to qualify, then the Vice President-elect shall act as President until a President shall have qualified. And the Congress may by law provide for the case wherein neither a President-elect nor a Vice President shall have qualified, declaring who shall then act as President, or the manner in which one who is to act shall be selected, and such person shall act accordingly until a President or Vice President shall have qualified.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Bishop.
Section 4. The Congress may, by law, provide for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the House of Representatives may choose a president whenever the right of the choice shall have devolved upon them, and for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the Senate may choose a vice president whenever the right of choice shall devolved upon them. Section 5. Sections 1 and 2 shall take effect on the 15th day of October following the ratification of this article. Section 6. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within the 7 years from the date of its submission. Amendment 21, Section 1. The 18th article of the amendment to the Constitution of the United States is hereby repealed. Section 2. The transportation or importation into any state, territory, or possession of the United States for delivery or use therein of intoxicating liquors in violation of the laws thereof is hereby prohibited. Section 3. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by conventions in the several states, as provided in the Constitution within the 7 years from the date of the submission hereof to the states by the Congress.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Walberg.
No person, Amendment 22, Section 1. No person shall be elected to the office of the President more than twice, and no person who has held the office of President or acted as President for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected President shall be elected to the office of President more than once. But this article shall not apply to any person holding the office of President when this article was proposed by Congress, and shall not prevent any person who may be holding the office of President or acting as President during the term within which this article becomes operative from holding the office of President or acting as President during the remainder of such term. Section 2. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission to the states by Congress.
The gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa.
Amendment 23, Section 1. The district constituting the seat of government of the United States shall appoint in such manner as Congress may direct a number of electors or of President and Vice President equal to the whole number of senators and representatives in Congress to which the district would be entitled if it were a state, but in no event more than the least populous state. They shall be in addition to those appointed by the states, but they shall be considered for the purposes of the election of President and Vice President to be electors appointed by a state, and they shall meet in the district to perform such duties as provided by the 12th Article of Amendment. Section 2. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment 24, Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for President or Vice President, for electors for President or Vice President, or for Senator or Representative in Congress shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state by reason of failure to pay poll tax or other tax. Section 2. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
The gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Tenney.
Amendment 25, Section 1. In case of the removal of the President from office or his death or resignation, the Vice President shall become President. Section 2. Whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the Vice President shall nominate a Vice President who shall take office upon confirmation by a majority vote of both houses of Congress. Section 3. Whenever the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, and until he transmits to them a written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the Vice President as acting President. Section 4. Whenever the Vice President and the majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the powers and duties of the office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the President as acting President. Thereafter, when the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office until the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit within 4 days to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Thereupon, Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for that purpose, if not in session. If the Congress, within 21 days after receipt of the latter written declaration, or if Congress is not in session within 21 days after Congress is required to assemble, determines by 2/3 vote of both houses that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall discontinue to discharge the same as acting President. Otherwise, the President shall resume the powers and duties of his office.
The gentleman from California, Mr. McNerney.
Amendment 26, Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of age. Section 2. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Woodall.
Amendment 27, no law varying the compensation for the services of the senators or representatives shall take effect until an election of representatives shall have intervened.